Get off! Get off! Get the over! Get the car! Call the cops! Somebody call the cops! He needs to get off of her!
That footage that you've just witnessed is of a father violently choking out and attacking his own daughter outside somewhere she should have felt safe, her school. This case is unbelievable for a range of reasons, including the sentence that I will come to when I conclude this particular case. It's one of those that is going to leave you feeling rather rageful for all the right reasons. But let's go back to the afternoon of the 24th of October 2024. This is when 17-year-old Fatima Ali is confronted by her parents, Ihsan and Zahraa. She's basically ran away from home for all the right reasons because they have arranged a marriage for her in Iraq, one that she doesn't want. And bear in mind, she's living in America. With respect, she has been open to American values. Whether you think that's a good thing or otherwise is irrelevant. Her world has been opened to Western belief systems, for example. The idea of being taken from that place and space, to be taken to Iraq, which is unfamiliar to you, to be put into a marriage with somebody that you don't want to be with, is obviously going to cause huge chaos for a young person. Now, she refuses to comply with her parents, and rightly so. And this is what leads to the attack that you have just witnessed. Essentially, an honour killing that was playing out in real motion if somebody had not intervened. This is a truly disturbing case. And like I said, one that's probably going to leave more questions than answers. So let's talk about the background of the main perpetrator in this case. That's Ihsan Ali. He was 44 years at the time of the trial, so he would have been 43 to 44 at the time of the actual attack. And then Zahraa Subi Moshin Ali, she was 40 at the time of this particular assault. And they were a married couple living in Lacey, Washington. They migrated from Iraq, and they had 2 children together, the eldest daughter of which is the victim in this case, Fatima Ali. She was aged 17 at the time of this horrific attack. Now, Fatima had a 16-year-old boyfriend, Isaiah Barnes. This is a relationship that her parents just completely disapproved of because they hadn't made the choice. He obviously wasn't somebody that they felt was appropriate for their daughter, and they wanted to control her choices. Now, according to Fatima herself, her parents, as I've said, wanted to force her into an arranged marriage with an older man and send her to Iraq against her will. I'm already out at this point. I'm already out. No young woman should ever be placed in this situation. I am somebody with experience in this area. I used to work at a very, very large college in the Manchester area, the largest one that we had, and we worked with the forced marriage unit because this happens. And it is astonishing to me the consequences that some girls face when they just say, no, I don't actually want to go back to Iraq, a place that I'm unfamiliar with, that I might have visited occasionally. And I certainly don't want to marry some guy I don't know. Now, Fatima had run away from home at least once before. This is seeking basically safety from her parents' threats because she was afraid that they were going to go through with some really unpalatable behaviour to get her to do their bidding. She'd actually disclosed to a Child Protective Services interviewer, and this is, by the way, with her boyfriend's mum present, who was obviously highly supportive of her, that her own father had recently been threatening her with an honour killing because she was refusing the arranged marriage. Now, this is, of course, the very extreme. We don't expect that honour killings are threatened by parents very often. Not in the UK, not in the United States, not in the Western world. I do appreciate it happens. I do appreciate it is threatened, but it is not normal and typical in households that you threaten your child with death if they don't do what you wish them to do. Also, I will acknowledge that people I know have had arranged marriages in the UK and they've been really successful. So too do I know people who've had arranged marriages and they've been awfully unsuccessful. At the end of the day, relationships are hard, and no matter how you meet somebody, they don't always work out, or they do work out. And like I said, I'm not saying that arranged marriages are terrible, because usually in the Western world, women have a choice to some degree in the person they're going to end up with, even though they will be selected from a group of individuals the parents feel are appropriate. But when we're talking about somebody being sent to a different country to meet a stranger who's older than them, to get them married off, that's terrifying for any young woman. And she actually said that when her father was threatening her, she really believed that her life was in danger.
Calling yourself a father. You tried to kill me. My dad tried to kill me with his own hands. Do you have no love for me?
And as I've already talked about, the video that circulated on social media where you see her father choking her out, it makes sense that she believed her life was in danger. Clearly, this is an abusive parent. Now, because she's spoken to the individuals who can help her at school, basically the authorities and school officials took some protective measures before the actual attack happened. They went out of their way to try to make sure she was safe. So Timberline High School in Lacey had a trespass order against Zahraa Ali. Now, essentially what that does is bans her from the school grounds because she's obviously a problem. They don't want her there. They want to protect the child and they take this action against her. And the reason that that was instituted was because of a prior incident which resulted in Victor Barnes, which is the father of Fatima's boyfriend. He felt that he needed to get this protection order against Zahraa because they were basically harassing the Barnes family. So for months, apparently, both Ali parents had been getting in contact with the Barnes family. They'd been repeatedly showing up at their home looking for Fatima. So the father in this case, on the boyfriend's side, decided he needed to take some action. But the relentlessness about these parents is also demonstrated in this moment. And it just says something about their territorial belief about their child, which is that she belongs to them. And I do appreciate that when we have children, we do have a level of feeling of ownership because we adore them, we love them, we want to protect them, we want to do what's right for them. But this is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about her being seen as something they own, like a piece of luggage and baggage that they can exchange, should they wish to, with anybody. At the end of the day, she is just stock that can be disposed of, should they choose to dispose of her, in this case, to some older guy in Iraq. Now, in the days immediately before the 18th of October 2024, there were a lot of tensions in the Ali house. In fact, you would say that they were reaching a boiling point. And the main issue was this planned trip to Iraq. So Ihsan and Zahraa had intended to put Fatima on a flight out of the country for this marriage that she doesn't want. Now, she knows when this is coming up, so she decides that she's going to run away, and that date was the 18th of October because this is the day that her flight was scheduled. Now, she goes back to her former school, Timberline High School. She wants to ask them to help her get some protection. Also, it's a public place. That means that she realises there'll be other adults present. They can intervene. She can get help should she need it. So she arranges with a school counsellor to actually go to a shelter instead of boarding that fateful plane. Now, of course, when the Alis discover that their daughter has betrayed them, has denied them the action that they want her to take, they begin searching for her. And eventually, in that sliding doors moment, they do manage to track her down to the Timberline High School. This is where Fatima is just waiting near the school grounds. She wants to get a city bus to take her to a shelter to spend the night there. And so she's just waiting there to get on that bus to safety. And her boyfriend is also very supportive. He's waiting with her. There's also a couple of his friends and her friends that are present too. And of course, Fatima has no idea that her parents are going to have figured out she might have gone to the school. In fact, it's not just her parents, it's her parents and her younger sister. They arrive by car to find her. Now, as soon as Ihsan spots his daughter, he just gets out of his vehicle, flies towards her, is seen yelling, and one student witness said Ihsan was just shouting at his daughter in Arabic. He's grabbing her by the shoulder. He's obviously, in the footage that circulated on social media, trying to drag her away, and Fatima rightfully resists. At this point, Isaiah steps in between them to protect her. Ihsan then punches Isaiah in the face and he gets sent flying. He's obviously a young lad and you're talking about a grown man who's assaulting him. At this point, he goes onto the concrete, so witness actually sees that play out. Ihsan then basically wraps his arms around his daughter's neck from behind, puts her in a chokehold, then forces her physically to the ground, and he will not let go. And it's like watching somebody who's in a wrestling match, you know, where they're trying to choke someone out. And this is his own daughter. She's 17, she's no match for this grown man. Now, one witness said that they estimated he was choking her for about 1 minute straight, and people were desperately trying to pull him off. But as you know, when it comes down to adrenaline cortisol, it can give people almost superhuman strength. And this man was worked up. His daughter had defied him. So by the time he actually sees her, he's rageful. And then when he's shouting at her and she's refusing to go with him, that makes him even more angry. So you've got all of those kind of chemicals pumping through the body. So once he's locked onto her, essentially it's like an aggressive dog. Once they've got that bite, they're not going to let go. And no matter who's kicking him, who's prying him off, nothing is happening, and she is just losing consciousness. She goes limp. Some people said that her eyes rolled back into her head. Her face is at this point pressed into the dirt. Others said that she looked like she was shaking and convulsing. Now bear in mind, whilst Ihsan's strangling his own daughter, her mother, Zahraa Ali, she arrives on the scene. Bear in mind, she's been barred from the school, so she shouldn't be anywhere near there. She then comes up and grabs Fatima from behind while she's locked in her father's chokehold. So this is an incredibly dangerous scene that people are witnessing, and Fatima's life is massively in danger. We all know how dangerous it is to cut off someone's oxygen supply, because when they are literally choked out and their eyes have rolled to the back of their head, they are no longer conscious, which means they are close to actually being murdered. Now, fortunately, 35-year-old local man named Josh Wagner was driving past with his family when he basically looks, sees that there's a fight going on, and first of all he thinks it's just a schoolyard fight, but he kind of pays attention to it, and then he realises it's an adult attacking a girl. And at this point, heroically, he pulls over and he runs to intervene. Now, because he's a guy, he physically is able to pull Ihsan off Fatima, and then unbelievably, and again even more heroically, he actually detains him until the police arrive. He actually wrestles him down, pins him to the floor. We need more men in our world just like that man. Now, bear in mind, what does the mother in this case decide to do when this confrontation is occurring? Does she think, well, my daughter might have been gravely injured. Do I need to protect her? What can I do to stop this horrible fallout and this assault continuing? No, she just carried on attacking her daughter. Literally, that happened. Now, Isaiah at this point grabs Fatima because, understandably, Fatima is completely disorientated and she's then pulled away from her parents' grasp. They run towards the school building, and at this point, Fatima is literally heard screaming, "My dad tried to kill me," which, with respect, it genuinely looks like that absolutely happened. Now, Timberline immediately placed the school on lockdown. They have procedures and policies in place to ensure that should these kind of attacks occur, obviously those inside are protected. The staff actually physically blocked the parents from entering the school after her. Now, Ihsan, bear in mind at this point, has been wrestled to the floor and has been detained by the hero who was passing in his car with his family. But Zahraa, she just runs after Fatima. She isn't giving up at all. Now, fortunately, within minutes, Lacey PD arrived on the scene and they swiftly take Ihsan into custody. Zahraa at this point was also arrested for her involvement in attacking her own daughter and violating the protection order by coming to the school. Fatima at this point is obviously devastated. She's been worried about the potential honour killing that might play out. She's now been violently assaulted in a place that she thought was safe. She's seen her boyfriend assaulted, and she now knows how her family feel towards her. Let's be really clear about that. There is a direct message in what's just played out. You are not important. Our wishes are important. Your needs are irrelevant. And if you dare to defy us, you can expect this kind of behaviour. That's a really psychologically awakening moment. Even if you thought maybe that's their motivation, to actually see it in clear light in this way, because you are that victim in that moment. It must have been horrific for Fatima. And she was terrified. She was terribly shaken. She'd been very badly injured after the attack. Bear in mind, she'd lost consciousness when she was strangled. Also, people who were looking at her were saying that she looked like she'd suffered a seizure, or at least seizure-like symptoms. Now, when she was assessed by the paramedics, they found bruises, scratches, they found red marks on both sides of her neck. They also, at that point, placed a cervical collar on her, just as a precaution, because obviously there could have been some serious damage to her neck, and she was then transported to St. Peter Hospital. Now, it turns out in the long term, there will be no permanent physical injury, but can we just be real here? When it comes down to physical injuries, on the whole, you will heal, but psychological trauma can be a whole different ballgame. The truth is, she knew that her parents wanted her dead in that moment. And to hold that, to walk with that for the rest of your days, Do you know that the very people who are meant to make you feel protected made you feel the most vulnerable? It's absolutely devastating. And of course, could last for the rest of her natural life. And I don't think you'll ever feel safe walking down the street if you know that people of your own blood wanted you extinguished from this world. Now, the investigation was led by the Lacey Police and Thurston County authorities. Bear in mind, the great thing about this is it was all on video. So the detectives were able to get that. And there was also a video that had been recorded by a student witness. So that actually captured the footage of the choking itself. Then they get the CCTV footage, which was collected from the nearby intercity transit bus. That gave a broader view of the struggle, basically from start to finish. And witnesses and school staff who were interviewed gave lots of statements. So Victor Barnes, he gave police a statement about the months of the prior harassment that led to that day. So he was able to kind of describe just how awful the Allies had been because his son was dating their daughter. Also, they were able to take direct evidence from Fatima. So she spoke after being medically evaluated with Officer Beltran of Lacey Police Department. She was obviously traumatised at this point, but she was lucid. And it's one of those challenges, isn't it, for the police officers? You obviously want to get the information as quickly as possible after an event because the person is very much aware of what's just played out, and interviewing somebody in their hospital bed, for example, is very common, but it's a balance that needs to be struck because of the fact that you want to make sure that that person is in a state to be interviewed while still being there at the point where they can give you the most information. And essentially, she is lucid, but obviously she's incredibly upset about what's played out. But of course, she is able to express to this detective that the attack was rooted in her refusal to go to Iraq and that she was meant to be being flown out of the country on the 18th of October. She said that her father had indeed held her in a chokehold. She said she couldn't breathe, she couldn't speak, and then she actually passed out. And she estimated that she'd lost consciousness multiple times and said that previous to this, both her parents had been abusive towards her. And that isn't a surprise. You can tell this is not their first time rodeo. They've clearly been abusive before. They seem very comfortable in being abusive. In fact, so comfortable that they will be abusive in front of a horde of people on video, in front of adults and young people. So they're not bothered about boundaries. Psychologically, they have a job to do, and come hell or high water, doesn't matter who's going to get in the way, they're going to carry out that job they've decided to actually continue with. And this is what makes them so dangerous because, like I said, these are the kind of individuals who get to such a age, who are so determined in their belief system that actually going and attacking this poor girl in public just seemed completely acceptable to them. So we get to the 8th of November 2024. This is when Ihsan and Zahraa Ali are charged with a series of felony offences. So they're charged with attempted second-degree murder, attempted kidnapping. Ihsan Ali is also charged with second-degree assault and assault in the 4th degree for punching Isaiah Barnes. Zahraa is charged with second-degree assault too. Zahraa was also facing second-degree burglary charge as well because she apparently violated a ban from school property and she violated domestic violence court order as well. So at this point, both of them pled not guilty because they're not, as far as they're concerned. Let's just be real about this. These guys don't think they did anything wrong. That's their daughter. If they want to kill her, they want to choke her to death outside of school, well, that's their right. They want to ship her off to Iraq to marry an older stranger, hey, no problem. So of course they don't think they're guilty. They think they've done what is within their jurisdiction. Now we get to the trial. That begins on the 14th of July 2025. It happens at Thurston County Superior Court in Olympia, Washington. The judge who presided over it was Christine Schaller, and they were both tried together. They each had their own defence counsel, but the case happened at the same time. So the prosecution was run by Olivia Zhu and Heather Stone, and Ihsan was represented by Eric Kading. Zahraa was represented by Tim Leary. Now, when it came down to the prosecution, they had an absolute plethora of witnesses. So they brought in John DeNicola. He's the bus driver. That was where they got the wider footage from. They brought him in and he said that he worked the Route 68 shift on the 18th of October 2024. It was from 8:40 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. So he is driving towards Timberland High School. And at this point, he notices, as you would when you're a bus driver, you can be very aware of your spatial zones, so you're going to kind of be taking everything in from all sides. He sees a commotion and he thinks, yeah, there's a fight going on, just assumed it was teenagers, but obviously it catches your interest. We're physiologically designed to notice these kind of things as a protective survival measure that we all have within us. But then he realizes, oh, hang on, this is not kids fighting. There is an adult male there. And he said he actually saw him grab a female student, who is, of course, Fatima, sees that he takes her by the throat, takes her to the ground, also notices that very bravely other students try to intervene. He actually blew the bus horn because he wants to break it up. But he said the man was relentless, he just didn't stop. So he then gets out of the bus, again, very heroically. He's yelling at this guy and saying, let her go. And he said there was something kind of strange about this guy because the man was just silent. He was just focused. He was being punched by people. The students were trying to get him off, but nothing was stopping him. There was just no reaction. He just knew what he was doing and he was going to go through with what he had decided. Now, this was all confirmed on the bus CCTV. They had that. It was brought into court. It had been reviewed. They also bring in as a prosecution Mary Wagner. Now, she said that she and her husband Josh, they're returning home from a late lunch and they see a fight near Timberland High School. They then pull into the left lane, they stop their Ram F-120 truck, they leave the vehicle. Josh crosses the road and Mary climbs into the driver's seat, calls 911 because obviously something terrible is playing out in front of her very eyes. Now, Josh Wagner, the hero in this case, he said the same. They're driving past Timberline High School, sees this group of kids fighting at a bus stop. And Josh Wagner said, look, I pulled over because initially I thought that the actual fight looked serious and unjust. It looked like there was more than a one-on-one fight going on here. And I wanted to make sure that I could help if help was needed. So again, very compelling. But of course, they also bring in Fatima Ali, the daughter in this case, and she is clearly devastated by what's happened. She goes in and she strongly and courageously testifies against her parents. She said on the morning of the 18th of October, she'd run away from home because she didn't want to go to Iraq with her mum and her siblings. She said she packed up all of her clothes and hygiene products. She took $100 from her mum and she then left home. She also said that she was aware that they were travelling to obtain Iraqi passports. She told the jury the conversation that she had between her and her father when he initially got out of his car after seeing her outside the school. She said, you know, they spoke in Arabic and it was a soft conversation. She said she did talk back to him. This is as the conversation started to escalate and grow louder. And she said Ihsan looked very frustrated with her. But then when he realises that nothing he said is going to change her mind, she starts trying to get onto the intercity transit bus, which is where she's going to go to that shelter. It's at this point he thinks absolutely under no circumstances. That's when he grabs her by her hoodie. Apparently he said, my daughter. And this is when the attack began. Now, when she was asked about how she felt following the incident, she said, heartbroken for what my dad did. I was afraid of dying. And there was a student who was actually waiting on the city transit bus. He testified that he tried to help free Fatima by kicking Ihsan in the head. She actually had visible scratches on the side of her neck at this point, and witnesses described Fatima as pale and lifeless as she was held in a chokehold. She also testified that when she woke up, she did remember her mother's voice and her mother was holding onto her by her chest or neck. And she said that Zahraa at this point wasn't trying to hurt her, that she was actually sad. So she's not coming guns blazing for her mum in that moment. She's saying that she seemed to be sad and she wasn't physically assaulting her according to her memory in that moment. Jurors were also shown images of injuries to Isaiah's face, so Fatima's boyfriend, because clearly he tried to protect her and he got punched in the face and thrown onto concrete for doing that. Now, he talked to the court about how he and Fatima had been dating for about a year before Fatima's family found out that she was in a relationship with him, and that was actually against the rules that applied in her household. So Ihsan and Zahraa at that point withdrew Fatima from school. They were so desperate to keep her away from Isaiah that they enrolled her in online courses. So she becomes a prisoner in her own home. Fatima said that she was really afraid to talk to her parents about the fact that she was unhappy, that she wanted to be with a boyfriend, and she hadn't told them that she was dating him because understandably she knew that they'd react badly. Now, when asked if Zahraa would hurt her, by the way, in court, she said that she didn't believe her mother would. So in spite of the fact that obviously the mother was aggressive on that particular day, maybe born out of protection towards a partner and her anger towards a daughter, certainly she didn't feel that the honour killing was something her mother would carry out. And that's very powerful and compelling when you think about listening to somebody in court, particularly a victim, say, no, I don't think that my mum would hurt me. That is going to land very positively with the jury. Now, when it came down to Isaiah Barnes giving evidence, he said he met Fatima in the freshman year of school. They began dating shortly after. He was actually apparently really surprised to see Fatima at school on the 18th of October because he didn't think she'd be around that area. She was being online schooled. He described her as really tired, like she hadn't slept. And the counsellors at Timberline High School, they actually asked Isaiah to escort Fatima to the bus stop after school. Now, he described walking along the path when they noticed a vehicle, which is the same make and model as Ihsan's. Now, they said apparently at this moment they just prayed it was a student's vehicle. That truck then followed them to the bus stop, parked nearby. Fatima was apparently visibly shaking when she was told that her father was at the school. Now, again, it was verified by Isaiah that Ihsan and Fatima initially were speaking softly to each other. Isaiah remains close to Fatima, is kind of offering her support, rubbing her back, which isn't going to go down well at all with the father in this case, is it? That she's physically being touched by a young man. Now, as they turn to board the bus, Ihsan grabs Fatima by the hoodie, tries to basically drag her away, and Isaiah tries to separate them. This is when he gets sucker punched and he flies back onto that concrete. Ihsan then grabs Fatima by the shoulders. When Isaiah gets up off the ground, he goes over and begins punching Ihsan. He actually broke his hand in the process. And again, it's just verified that Ihsan just was locked in at this point to attacking his daughter. He was really angry looking and he just wouldn't let go. In fact, one of the things that Isaiah did in court was get really upset, became really emotional when he described how Fatima's face was really pale, her eyes were rolling back into her head, because essentially you're witnessing somebody near death in that moment. Now, they also had student witnesses.
After he punched Isaiah in the face, what did he do after that?
I'm not exactly sure, but I looked and they had fell to the ground and he had Ali in a chokehold.
So Caleb said that Isaiah was basically trying to de-antagonize the situation, so to de-escalate it. Athena said that Fatima was wearing baggy clothing and a COVID mask. She basically wanted to conceal her identity. She was also carrying a lot of bags, which she would be because she got her belongings. And she described trying to help free Fatima from her father's grasp. She was dragging her and pulling her up after Ihsan let go of Fatima. She said that Zahraa, the mother, was screaming and crying at the sight of her husband and daughter on the ground. And after Fatima was free, Zahraa did indeed try to grab her and place her arms around Fatima's chest and neck. I'm just going to go down the route of, when it comes down to Fatima saying her mother hadn't necessarily tried to hurt her, that maybe she was just trying to restrain her to prevent her leaving as opposed to trying to attack her in that moment. Now, understandably, there were quite a few professionals involved in this case because clearly Fatima was injured. So Synovia Rivas, who is a forensic nurse examiner, she actually specialises in strangulation, particularly symptoms that are not visible. Now, she recalled that Fatima reported her dad had grabbed her hoodie and placed her in a headlock. Also said that her mum grabbed her neck with her hands and that she thought she was going to die. So a little bit out of kilter, like I said, with what's reported about Zahraa in this case, because clearly she was being very aggressive. Now, imagining that you're going to die must be absolutely horrific for Fatima, particularly at the hands of her parents. She actually details symptoms of being dizzy, numb, having a headache, memory issues, the fact that she went through some visual changes. She had a sore throat, she had difficulty swallowing and breathing and speaking. She's apparently dealing with a level of hyperventilation and also had really serious pain in her neck for a period of time and her shoulder. And this expert said that she actually observed petechiae, which are basically small red spots on Fatima's eyes and face, that she also saw those abrasions and discoloration on her neck and shoulder. So clearly she's been seriously attacked, and you don't get those little blood spots unless you've been assaulted in this kind of way. Then there was a family nurse practitioner brought into court called Lisa Wall. She works at the Providence Abuse and Intervention Centre. She testified that she performed dozens of strangulation exams. She actually examined Fatima a few weeks after she was initially treated in the ER. Fatima at this point still had symptoms, so she had blurry vision that had apparently gotten worse since. and she said that this affected her more when she was stressed. She also had jaw and neck pain, and she had to apparently move slowly because of the trauma recall, and she was still having neck pain as of the 5th of December 2024. Dr. Jennifer Stankus was also brought into court. She was an emergency physician. She'd reviewed Fatima's medical records, police reports, and bus surveillance video. And she explained what pneumomediastinum is. It's basically air trapped in the chest cavity. It can be caused by blunt force trauma. It's not apparently commonly seen in strangulation. And in this case, this physician believed Fatima's case was mild. She only required observation and antibiotics. But with respect, I don't think the attack can be described as mild. And I'm sure that the impact of the attack isn't mild either. They also brought in Dr. Sung Won Sim. This is somebody who worked at St. Peter's Hospital. They treated Fatima, and basically this individual testified that she had supplemental air around her trachea. Now, the amount of air in her neck wasn't large. Apparently by the following morning, the supplemental air had resolved, but clearly, again, demonstrative of being strangled. Now, on cross, Dr. Kim said the amount of force applied to Fatima's neck was similar to a firm handshake. I'm not sure how helpful that was. I literally thought about, a really firm handshake, and I thought, you know what? When it comes down to two guys with a really hard handshake, firm handshake, if you have that around your neck, that's really serious, but I feel it minimizes the description because everybody has a different idea of what a firm handshake is. But if I think about a really firm handshake, think about two guys who just want to prove that they're both confident to each other, they're meeting for the first time, like, I'm going to give you a firm handshake. That can be really strong. But if you are not somebody, for example, if you're a female, if you're a juror who's female and you're listening to somebody describe a firm handshake, you're like, oh, that's not going to be too bad, is it? That really diminishes and minimizes what's played out in this attack. And it worries me that descriptor was used. Now, a paediatrician called Dr. Joyce Gilbert was also brought into court. They showed the jury Fatima's CT angiogram scans, and again, that showed air trapped outside her trachea following the incident. Now, on cross, she acknowledged that cerebral edema could result from someone hitting their head or being punched by someone. So what you can hear here is the defense are desperately trying to minimize what's played out regarding strangulation. Oh no, he wasn't really trying to kill her. What could have happened is that when she fell to the ground and her father took her down, that she could have hit her head, or maybe when somebody was trying to pull him off or kicking him, she could have ended up getting kicked. It's a very clever way of diffusing the actual reality of the seriousness of what played out. They also bring in Officer Tori Chavez, and Tori Chavez basically comments on the mother in this case, said that Zahraa had arrived on the scene to see Isaiah punching her husband multiple times, and she obviously at this point was worried about the fact that her husband was being potentially hurt. She was visibly upset. She told the police officer at the scene that Isaiah was changing her daughter's mind, that he was a danger to her, but apparently she never actually asked about Fatima's health or welfare. She was just completely obsessed with her husband and the fact that her daughter was dating a guy that she didn't approve of, basically. Then they brought in a mental health specialist called Elizabeth Robinson. This is the specialist who works at Timberline High School. Now, she was basically brought in to testify as to why the school hadn't informed Fatima's parents about the fact that she was leaving home. But she came in and said, look, I'm bound by state's confidentiality law not to disclose information when it comes down to runaway youth. I wasn't obligated to notify Fatima's parents. I wanted to protect her. Now, she was asked about whether they'd spoken to resource officers at school or she'd called law enforcement about Fatima's case or Child Protective Services because of incidents that might have occurred previous to this. She said, well, no, none had actually been called in Fatima's case. Now, bear in mind, Fatima has said that abuse did play out at home, but what is noted there is none had been recorded by the school because Fatima probably hadn't told them about what was happening until a critical point. Doesn't mean it didn't exist, and that's why Robinson probably didn't speak to anybody else because it was something that was being dealt with in the moment. Now, when it came down to the defense of this case, well, Ihsan and Zahraa just didn't testify. They chose not to speak at all. They didn't call witnesses of their own, and they didn't present any specific evidence. So you would imagine that's a pretty slam dunk case when it comes down to the prosecution. They've got a lot of witnesses coming in. They've got a lot of substantive evidence that suggests that what played out, played out. They've got video and CCTV footage, and they've got professionals describing the injuries that Fatima experienced and endured. And also, we have repeated hostilities because we know that Isaiah's family were harassed by her family because they were unhappy about their relationship. So certainly I would imagine that would be a very strong prosecution case. So in the closing arguments of this case, Heather Stone told the jurors that the state is not asserting that Ihsan Ali showed up with the intent to kill his daughter. But when he goes into the events of October the 18th, 2024, Ihsan Ali's intent changed. So basically, what they're asserting in that moment is, okay, he didn't drive to the school thinking, I'm going to murder my daughter in public. Initially, he tried to talk her into getting into the car so that he could pack her off, some would say to a fate worse than death, to Iraq to marry some older guy that she didn't want to be with. But essentially, when she refuses to do that, doesn't do his bidding, at that point he thinks, right, I'm going to go straight down the line of an honour killing. And that's why he tried to choke his daughter to death outside the school. Let's be clear about this. He was not letting go. Had it not been for the very brave interveners, she would likely be dead. And I would be telling a totally different story than what I'm telling right now. Now, in court, the state also said that Zahraa, the mother in this case, intended only to stop the teens attacking her husband and did nothing to assist Fatima. So basically, the mother in this case was on the father's side. And the state prosecutor said you cannot strangle your child to restrain them. Very true. Can you imagine if that was actually acceptable? There'd be fatalities everywhere. Now, Eric Kading, he said, and again, when I talk about minimisation, I cannot express how unhappy I am with this defence lawyer. I appreciate he's doing his job, but the way he minimises is just disrespectful beyond belief. So what Eric Kading said was, the case against Ihsan boils down to 53 seconds. How to minimise strangling somebody. 53 seconds, you know what, Eric? Do you know how long it takes to murder somebody with a gun? A millisecond. You shoot them. You know how long it takes to murder a baby? You throw them against the wall once. Again, a second. Are you kidding me that you're trying to suggest that 53 seconds of strangulation is not a case? I mean, it's a compelling argument. Oh, come on. He's lived his whole life and it's only 53 seconds that he's actually strangling his daughter to death outside of school. It's mind-blowing how this minimisation can be an effective measure, because all of a sudden people are going, oh, yeah, I mean, it only went on for less than a minute. Well, no, she was 17. She'd had a lifetime of oppression. A lifetime of oppression that was going to be sealed, fate-wise for her, when she was shipped off to Iraq to marry a stranger she didn't want to marry. And what's she guilty of? She's guilty of being a normal 17-year-old girl, wanting a relationship with a normal 16-year-old boy. Just a typical relationship in a typical world that she was used to. That's why she's getting strangled outside of school? And yet, apparently, we can minimise in this way. I know that's his job. But as a woman, as a female, with daughters, I find it very, very frustrating. And obviously, they're trying to basically suggest that in this case, Ihsan is also reacting to all these people who are trying to drag him off his daughter. And at the end of the day, you know, he's dealing with the physical assault of others. So now he's suddenly the victim as well. Now, when it comes down to Tim Leary, who is defending Zahraa, they actually show Zahraa arrive on the scene. This is after her husband's arrived. At this point, he and her daughter are on the ground near the Intercity Transit bus stop. So at that point, she isn't privy to exactly what's played out. We've got to give Zahraa that with respect. When it comes down to culpability, clearly Zahraa is not in the same frame of reference as her husband. But he said Zahraa was basically taking her family to Iraq because it was apparently the last chance to, quote, hit the reset button. Basically, quote, in an attempt to get her daughter Fatima on the right track. Sorry, what's that? What's that? Yes, she just wanted to get her on the right track. What track is that? Just the right track, the reset button. So what kind of reset button? Just the big reset button. You know the big reset button that parents have? No, I don't know what that reset button is. If there is a miraculous reset button, I'd like to buy at least 4 because I have 4 children. So it'd be really nice to know that I could reset occasionally. No, what I'm talking about isn't a literal reset button. No, what are you talking about? Because I just want to get some kind of specifics. What's the reset button? Well, when I say reset button, what I'm actually meaning is forced marriage. That doesn't sound like a reset button. That sounds abusive. Well, you say it's abusive. I say it's just getting her back on the right path. Is the right path marrying an older stranger that she doesn't actually know or want to be with? That's the one. That's the reset button. Honestly, again, I know it's their job, but minimization really doesn't cut it. And then, and this is the pièce de résistance, because guys, this is in America, okay? America. How you act in America should come under the jurisdiction of America. If you live in America, then you are privy to the rules and regulations of America, as you are to the rights and privileges. I don't care what your culture is. I don't care what your background is. I don't care what your ethnicity is. I don't care what your religion is. You're an American. That's it. And you should be afforded the rights and privileges and also the punishments appropriately if you break and breach the law. But somehow, in court, what was brought in was, my client is different, quote. You can't allow yourself to look at her any differently and reach a decision because she's different. The decision has to be the same whether or not her child grew up in kindergarten to junior year and the mum is the head of the PTA. If she were the head of the PTA and did exactly what my client did, I don't think she would be here. What? What? What are you on about? Can we be real here? What basically this man is saying is, yes, she looks different, distinct, because understandably, she's from the Muslim world. She is an individual who has different cultural understanding as far as what she wants for her children. I get all that. We can all agree that is completely acceptable. You do you. But the idea that he's saying to the jury, oh, are you going to notice that she looks a bit different? That could make you a bit racist, couldn't it? You're not going to accept that she's got cultural differences, and that could make you a little bit, shall we say, militant right-wing, because that's the way things are posed these days. And by the way, if you don't imagine that for 1 minute you'd be treating this person differently if she was white and had the PTA, you are insane. Sorry, let's just run that through. So you are saying that if this woman, and let's just put it as it is, was white, Christian, head of the PTA, she would not be in court. That's exactly what I'm saying. So you're saying that if this woman was white, Christian, head of the PTA, she wouldn't be in court because everyone would be like, it's totally okay that she strangled a child outside school. That's exactly what I'm saying. And you're adding to that if she was, I don't know, a member of the FLDS, and had decided that she was going to marry her child off to a 65-year-old white guy from Church of the Latter-day Saints, offshoot, used to be run by Warren Jeffs. You're saying that would be cool with you. Everyone would be like, yeah, we're fine. It's okay. They're white and Christian. She can do that. I'm saying exactly that. She can just strangle a child and marry her off to some stranger. Absolutely no problem. Honestly, stop it. Stop it. It is so derogatory to actually pose that. I actually can't believe it was brought into court in this context. And I know it's the defence's job to do that. But again, I'm imagining how things are these days where people feel that they've got to be virtuous and do the right thing and often get blurred because of this kind of mental gymnastics. This woman, I do not believe, is anywhere near as culpable as her husband, but nonetheless, the idea that she was physical towards her daughter in any way worries me. And then if you add to that the fact that she was going to send her child off to Iraq to marry a stranger, she wanted to do that, and the fact that she actually was there watching her child being violently attacked and didn't do anything apart from care for the husband in this case, that, to me, means that we would all ideally react exactly the same no matter what her colour was. And certainly if she was the head of the PTA and had grown up in middle-class suburbia in America, we would still treat her with exactly the same force of the law. Of course we would, probably, to be fair, even more so these days. But we're expected to believe that because she looks different, she's ended up in court. Well, soon you're going to hear, I do think they're treated differently, for all the wrong reasons. Because on the 29th of July 2025, the deliberations began. Jury consisted of 9 men, 3 women. deliberated for just over 19 hours over 3 days. 31st of July 2025, the jury acquitted Ihsan and Zahraa of attempted second-degree murder. Riddle me that. Now, Zahraa was convicted of violating a no-contact order filed on behalf of Isaiah's father. So at this point, by the way, she'd actually served more than the allotted time for the crime. So she was immediately released from Thurston County Adult Detention Centre the same day. She must abide by existing no-contact orders, but that's it. And don't get me wrong, with respect, I think she's a diabolical example of a mother. I really do. She disgusts me on every level. But equally, I don't think she should be in prison. I really don't. So I'm going to acknowledge that because she was a victim of circumstance in that situation. Do I agree with the fact she was shipping her daughter off against her will to Iraq to marry some guy that she didn't know? No, I think it's disgraceful. You don't bring a child to the United States and then place them behind glass and say, by the way, you can't have any of this. It's very conflicting and everyone has a right to choose. And I'm a Western white woman, so I appreciate my views are culturally distinct to those who might come from a different faith group. I get that. I acknowledge that. I'm talking from my only perspective, which is the only one I know. Equally, I don't think it's fair to introduce children to a world of possibility and then say, by the way, none of this is for you. I just don't think that's fair. And I think that if the child wants what you want for them, brilliant. That's amazing. Absolutely. Many children do. My son's very close friend, all of his boys in the family have had arranged marriages. Don't get me wrong, they're arranged marriages, which is where they get to say yes or no to the girl and the girl gets to do the same. And you know what? It works. They are Afghans. They specifically want Afghan girls. And the youngest boy, who my son is very close to, we will be going to their wedding and it will be a wonderful event, but he will have had a say in it, right? He's gone down that road of feeling that that's right for him. Equally, if your child says no, you have no right to say that they have no choice and actually can be harmed should they choose not to follow what you want for them, even if you do think you know better, which you don't, with respect. But like I said, when it comes down to her, I get it. I absolutely get it. Now, when it comes down to Ihsan, I don't. So he obviously stayed behind bars until sentencing. He was finally convicted of second-degree assault, unlawful imprisonment, and a misdemeanor of assault in the 4th degree. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Absolutely ridiculous. When it came down to the sentencing hearing, it took place on the 18th of August 2025. Fatima at this point appeared at the hearing to confront her parents. I think she's incredibly brave, incredibly courageous, an amazing young girl and an example to so many people to stand firm even in the face of such hostile adversity. She called her father a disgusting monster and said that she would pray for him to die in jail. That's what he's done to her. That's what these parents did to her. That's the result. They could have just let her have choices. They could have shared a life with her. When she had children, been grandparents, they could have chosen that path. But instead, they chose, well, in his case, honor for the family, I guess. And now this girl prays for him to die in jail. That's the result. What an achievement. She said in court, "You're a monster. I can't believe you're my dad. How can you call yourself a father? You tried to kill me. My dad tried to kill me with his own hands. Do you have no love for me?" She said her mother watched her almost die and didn't help her at all. She called her mother a selfish and bad mother. Amen to that. She absolutely is correct. She said, "I'm a young, growing woman that wants a better future for herself. Don't stop me for trying to be better. I wanted you to help me. I wanted you to protect me. I wanted you to make me happy like a mum is supposed to. Why did you let my dad hurt me? Like, just because he was mad?" Now, a victim advocate read aloud words from Isaiah Barnes, who said Ihsan and Zahraa directed racial slurs at him and judged him. He said in this particular statement, "I recently turned 17 and I still get anxious, on edge, stressed, afraid and nervous anytime there is a mention of the situation or when I see someone that looks like them." Now, when it came down to the sentencing remarks, Ihsan was given the maximum sentence for the top 2 charges, which is a pitiful 14 months in prison for second-degree assault and 12 months in prison for unlawful imprisonment. Bear in mind, he's already been in jail for 10 months, so he's going to be out before you know it. Ihsan must also complete 30 months community service and a parenting class. He doesn't need a parenting class. He just needs not to have ever had children. That would have been the actual right choice for him to have made, because this kind of guy should never be a father. Also, he can't contact Fatima for 10 years. I think that should be a lifetime ban. That girl should never have to have him in her life. He should never be allowed near her. Now, on the 4th degree assault charge and conviction, he was sentenced to 364 days with 182 suspended. So they occur concurrently. He basically can't have contact with Isaiah for 24 months, which again is pathetic. Now, Judge Shallas told him, you were not going to let her go, and you were not going to let her breathe. You were going to maintain control. She also highlighted that he didn't act in self-defense. He showed no remorse for nearly killing his child. She said, children are not property to do with as a parent desires. Your behavior was reprehensible and nothing justifies what you did. You can see that this judge believes he was guilty and should have gone down for the higher charge. Absolutely. How is this man getting such a pitiful sentence? He literally, on video, almost murdered his child. It's unbelievable. It is absolutely astonishing to me. Now, the judge also took time to address Fatima directly and said, always know, despite what has happened, you get to define who you are. You have power and you have strength, and no one can take that away from you. Now, I'll tell you why legally the jury apparently acquitted on attempted murder. So it's to do essentially with the concept of intent. So under Washington law, to be guilty of attempted second-degree murder, a defendant must have the specific intent to cause the death of another person and take a substantial step toward committing that murder. Now, I agree that's a high bar, but essentially it's on the prosecution's shoulders to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the attacker meant to kill the victim. Apparently, there was a lack of explicit proof of intent. So the defense attorney, Kading, highlighted this apparently, saying, in this case, I think it was clear to the jury that there just wasn't a lot of evidence that supported the theory he intended to kill his daughter. It's on video. It's on video. It's on video. She told you previously he'd been abusive. He literally gripped on and wouldn't let go. Even the mother didn't try to drag him off. But apparently, even though this is down to her refusing to marry a stranger in Iraq, and in spite of him doing this completely in public, yeah, there's no real intent there. He didn't really intend to kill her. He choked her out. Her eyes went to the back of her head. She was unconscious. People said she was fitting, but he didn't want to kill her. He just wanted to mildly injure her, just to hit the reset button, shall we say. Now, one juror commented, this was relayed by the attorneys, that the scenario seemed like a frenzy where the father might not have been thinking rationally. Oh, I get it now. I get it now. I get it now. So, when you murder somebody, ration is what tends to be playing out. You're just rationally doing it. When you pick up that gun in the argument and you shoot that person, you're just rationally thinking. When you lose control because you find out that that guy is sleeping with your girlfriend and you punch him, you're just rationally thinking. I mean, I don't think ration really plays in to most attacks with respect. Those that lead to people being imprisoned for decades. Often there isn't a lot of ration behind it. But I'll tell you this, he got in a car, he drove looking for her with the full intent of bringing her where he decided he wished to bring her. He had suggested that if she didn't do the bidding, there would be trouble. Clearly, that's why she'd gone to the school for help. So there was premeditation as to what would happen if she didn't comply. And then he was shipping her off to marry a stranger in Iraq. I mean, he knew what he was doing. He just didn't get his own way. And if he wasn't going to get his own way, he was going to do the next best thing, which was to stop her having an opportunity to live freely, to live by her choices. And we all know what I'm talking about. We're talking about honour killing. We're talking about him publicly killing his daughter. And this has happened many times, not usually in America or the Western world, but it happens regularly, sadly, in other continents. Let's just be real about this. But apparently, the juror said, he probably just wasn't thinking rationally. How have the defence managed to convince the jury that this was just a guy who had a bad day? Now, when it comes down to Zahraa, the mother in this case, I have to agree with the jury. I don't think that she was intending to kill her daughter at that moment in time. I mean, some witnesses said that they saw her grab Fatima, But the jury clearly had doubt that Zahraa intended any serious harm. And like I said, I think that morally and ethically, she's a disgraceful human being for what she wanted to do to her daughter. But again, that isn't a legal benchmark. That's just a personal opinion. So I agree that the jury were right on that level. Now, one of the things that blows my mind is the honor killing motive was literally excluded from the trial. I mean, he threatened his daughter with honor killing. She told people she thought she was going to be honor killed. And yet at the end of the day, they excluded it from the trial. So without the motive, the jurors are going to struggle to understand why the parents are going to want to kill their child. We're assuming, aren't we, that they will know that these kind of things happen. But many people don't even know what an honor killing is. You need to bring it into court to describe it, to understand the seriousness of what can happen to some girls when they say no to their parents. But it wasn't allowed in. Now, many legal experts point out that attempted murder is genuinely one of the hardest charges to prove, especially in domestic violence cases. But let me tell you, research shows that non-fatal strangulation is one of the top predictors of future homicide in domestic violence situations. Let that sink in. If you get strangled by someone, so if any of you are listening to me now and you're in a situation where you're with a partner who has strangled you and choked you out, and I know that some of you will be, this is a major predictor in death. So if they've done that to you previously, you are literally playing with fire, no matter how difficult it is for you to leave that situation if you stay. Because I promise you, they are leading to a scenario that could prove fatal for you. In fact, one study found a victim who had been strangled by a partner even once is 700% more likely to be the victim of an attempted homicide by that partner, and 800% more likely to be killed by them eventually. Please listen. If you have had your neck wrapped with their hands, because it is an indicator that you are 800% more likely to be killed by them eventually. But of course, the jury, as far as they're concerned, can't convict for what might happen in the future. They have to be convinced of the intent at the time. But like I said, honor killing was never brought in. So could they really understand intent at all? I would say no. And when I think about comparative cases, I think about somebody like Yasser Abdul Sayed. Yasser Abdul Sayed was an Egyptian-American man. He murdered his 2 teenage daughters in Irving, Texas, and it's definitely an honor killing. So New Year's Day 2008, he shot his daughters Amina and Sarah. They were 18 and 17. He was in his taxi at the time when he did that, and the reason for that was he was enraged that they were dating non-Muslim boys and living the Western lifestyle. That's right. Literally, in a Western country. So, just kill them. He ended up going on the run. He actually managed to successfully evade capture for 12 years. Now, when he was finally caught and tried in 2022, a Dallas County jury convicted him of capital murder. Evidence was overwhelming. In fact, one of his dying daughters, Sarah, managed to call 911 and identify her father, said, "Help, I'm dying. My dad shot me." The jury only deliberated for 3 hours before finding him guilty. He got life in prison without the possibility of parole. Amen to that. Followed by burning for the rest of eternity in hell. And the Sayed case had clear evidence of premeditation and intent, so he lured the girls into his taxi, ostensibly for a ride to dinner. Then he executed them, let that sink in that actually happened. And law enforcement framed it explicitly as an honor killing, motivated by his obsession with control and also the perceived dishonor to the family. Now, of course, the key difference here is that Sayed murdered his daughters, so there was no doubt of the lethal intent. The Ali case, by contrast, has stopped short of death, so it falls into this legally grey zone, I imagine you'd say. So a much lighter punishment of under 2 years, essentially. Now, the comparison that I used then was just to illustrate how fortunate it was that people were there to intervene and save Fatima's life, because he was going to kill her. It's as simple as that. I don't need to know anything more than the video. I don't need to know any more than the information I've heard from Fatima herself. He would have killed her. And also you've got the Shafila Ahmed case. This is where Iftikhar and Fazana Ahmed, a Pakistani-British couple, they murdered their 17-year-old daughter, Shafila Ahmed, in 2003. Again, why did they murder her? She defied an arranged marriage. She embraced Western habits because, you know, she was in the UK. Now, originally she lived in Bradford. She then moved to Warrington, which is about 30 minutes away from where I live, and they suffocated her with a plastic bag. And bear in mind, her younger siblings had to watch, so they knew their sister was dead. Now, that crime went unsolved for years. Fortunately, one of her sisters came forward with eyewitness testimony, and in 2012, the Ahmed parents were found guilty of their daughter's murder. They were given life with a minimum of 25 years, which is nothing really. They killed their child in such a horrific way for doing what? Just wanting to live her life freely. The judge actually stated in that case, your concern about being shamed in your community was greater than your love for your child. Now again, for me, the sentencing there is just jarring. The Ahmeds will spend 25 years in prison. Said will die in a US prison for killing his daughters. Yet Ihsan will be out in under 2 years for nearly strangling his daughter to death. It's driven me to the brink, this one. Now, obviously there's a fallout from this horrendous crime. Fatima has remained under extended foster care. She's now receiving counselling. Apparently she has nightmares. She says it's hard to let go. And she has urged others in abusive homes to speak up, to seek help sooner than she was able to. She said, I really had to get choked for me to get help. I didn't want that, but that's the only way I got it. And you know what, Fatima? Your bravery, your speaking out, your fight back is what other young women need to do. No one should be a slave to other people's desires. I don't care who you are, where you come from, what you believe in. You should always have personal choice. And if someone wishes to suffocate that choice, steal that choice, so that you can live a life of unhappiness because they will get what they want instead, it is just the most dreadful scenario to spend your life doing. Life is a struggle enough without suffering eternally in a relationship that you're unhappy to be in. If you have the privilege of a free world, and don't get me wrong, sometimes it feels like our world is getting less and less free, but for the most part in places like the UK and the Western world, there is still certain freedoms and privileges. If you bring your children up in these environments, then you should allow your child to have the privileges of that environment. And if you are a young person who is struggling with this, then you are listening to me today, saying what I'm saying, know that whilst it is difficult and it is also dangerous for some children to get out of these situations, there are places like the forced marriage unit, there are places where you can go to get help, speak to a person at school, speak to a police officer, whatever you need to do to get the support and help that will drive your freedom and drive your future, that is what you need to do. Do it quietly. I appreciate you don't want to talk to other people about this. You want to do it in the most confidential way possible so that you can make sure that you are alerting only those who can help you to your plight. Honestly, there is a world out there in spite of it being difficult without your family, because I appreciate that what I'm saying means that some people will be denied re-entry to their family at all. They will be ostracized from their community. I appreciate that is a big ask. Rebuilding your life by yourself is challenging, but you're not alone. There are lots of groups of young women in particular who have connected because of this kind of treatment. Know there's help out there, know that you deserve it, and know that there is a future that is as bright as you wish for it to be. Don't let fear keep you a prisoner. Like I said, this one has driven me to the brink of distraction. The actual sentencing is disgusting. I genuinely thought it would be a couple of decades, and it's been pathetic. Anyway, as ever guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you again next time. Be safe.